Welcome to episode 39 of the Filmumentaries podcast. This is Jamie Benning here. If you're a new listener, welcome. You are in for an interesting conversation between me and my guests today. If you don't know about my work, just to quickly go back, some years ago I created a new form of behind-the-scenes documentary, which I called a filmumentary. Think about it as a DVD commentary squared, or even cubed. You can still check them out at vimeo.com/filmumentaries. I now produce this podcast in which I talk to guests who are connected to or work within the film industry, from, say, opening titles designer Dan Perry to editor and sound designer Walter Murch. So please do go back and check out some of the earlier episodes. If you're a regular listener, welcome back. And if you support the podcast on Patreon, patreon.com/Jamie Benning, thank you so much. I really couldn't do this without you. It's not a huge amount of money that I'm getting back from making these podcasts because I invest quite a bit as well. But it really does mean a lot to me that there are now 74 of you contributing to this. If you'd like to contribute, visit the website, visit Patreon, and you'll see there's a number of different tiers there. You get different bonuses with each tier. And if you choose one of the top tiers, you get some merchandise as well. Some people have been quite enjoying the fact that there's now an annual subscription. So for just $12, you help me produce 24 episodes over a 12-month period. Okay, so this is the second episode in just 2 days. Unprecedented. I only just released episode 38 with Howard Kazanjian yesterday, but I've felt the need to get this episode and its story out there because it's one that I've been chasing since 22nd of November 2021. It started while I was at work at Formula One talking with my friend Will Buxton. Will is a presenter and a big movie fan like me, and we got talking about the imminent auction of the Jodorowsky's Dune pitch book. So if you don't know this story, I implore you to go and seek out the 2013 documentary Jodorowsky's Dune and watch it before you listen to the podcast. But if you want to go ahead and listen now, I'll give you a quick summary. So back in the mid-1970s, the Chilean-French director and performer Alejandro Jodorowsky became consumed with producing a film version of Frank Herbert's Dune. He managed to pull the resources of people like Dan O'Bannon, Mobius, Giger, and Chris Foss, much of the talent that went on to work on seminal sci-fi films and indeed inspire a whole generation of filmmakers as well. So Jodorowsky put together this pitch book. Now this thing is huge with thousands of illustrations, storyboards, costume designs, architectural designs, all by these artists with the intention of sending it around all of the Hollywood studios to convince them to buy his idea for the movie and let him direct it. Ultimately, his endeavour failed for a multitude of reasons, but its influence still resonates really strongly today. There were supposedly between 10 and 20 of these books produced and dished out to the Hollywood studios. Now, one of these came up for sale in 2019 and sold for $42,500, which was a huge amount. But on the 22nd of November this year, another sold, but this time it went for $3 million. All thanks to one man stepping in at the last minute and buying it on behalf of a collective who at that point had managed to raise only $750,000. Now that man's name is Soby. He was somewhat of a mystery to me for several days, but I managed to connect with him over Twitter, thanks to Will Buxton again for spotting him and giving me the heads up. And we got chatting, and he agreed to come on the podcast to talk through just what went down and why, really. It then occurred to me that I should contact the director of the documentary Jodorowsky's Dune, a guy called Frank Pavich. Again, after a quick search, I made contact with Frank, and he was also keen to join, having seen the story in the press himself. I then thought, what if my friend Dan Lanigan could get involved? So Dan Lanigan, a former guest of this podcast, prop collector and co-creator of Disney Plus's Prop Culture. And Dan was very keen, and I knew he'd bring his unique perspective as a collector and a producer as well to the conversation. To my knowledge, this is somewhat of an exclusive. This is the first podcast interview with Soby regarding the Dune book sale. And to have both Frank and Dan involved is an absolute treat. There's quite a lot of chat about cryptocurrency, blockchain, DAO or DAO, so I've included some links to videos and definitions in the show notes. So, here's my chat with Jodorowsky's Dune director, Frank Pavich, producer and collector Dan Lanigan, and the enigmatic and charismatic Soby. And I'll be back at the end for a bit more jabbering on. Okay, so today I've got with me three guests here, which is quite rare for the Filmumentaries podcast. I have my friend and previous guest on the podcast, Dan Lanigan, who is a prop collector of 25 years or so. Dan is also a producer, has worked and created the Prop Culture show for Disney Plus, on which we both worked. Dan worked a hell of a lot more than I did. I was a small consultant on that, but
but it was great to have you on, James.
Thanks, man, and we became friends since then. Also have Frank Pavich here with us, who directed Jodorowsky's Dune. I'm sure the word Jodorowsky is going to be pronounced in all and many and varied ways that it has over the years.
There are many ways to pronounce it, that's for sure. Nobody really knows.
Thanks for joining us, Frank. And we also have Soby. Soby is here because of this story we're looking into. We're looking into this story of the sale of the Jodorowsky's Dune book, the pitch book that he sent around the studios many years ago, which is chronicled in Frank's film, of course. Now, it's a really interesting story, not only because of the value of the item or the sale of the item, the final sale price of the item, but because of the item itself, because it's not a prop. It's not been seen in a movie. It's not, screen used. It's not even part of the production because, of course, the film never got made. So I'm interested in all of your perspectives on this and why we've reached this point of the Christie's auction, with the item going for $3 million. But Frank, if you could just set up with us your project, your film that you worked on and released in 2013. Why is this film important? Or why is this story important? And why is this artifact itself important?
Well, I mean, very quickly, I made a documentary called Jodorowsky's Dune, which was the story of Alejandro Jodorowsky attempting to make the first filmed version of Dune. This is 10 years before David Lynch, and obviously, way before the current day and Denis Villeneuve's film. So I made this documentary, which is what I called it's the story of the greatest movie never made, because it's about this guy who wanted to do more than a film. He says in the beginning of the documentary, he says he didn't want to just make a film, he wanted to make a profit. He wanted his film to be a profit. He wanted to change the entire world. And he basically spent 2 years in Paris with a team of what he called spiritual warriors. And he got the greatest artists that he could gather. He got Mobius, he got H.R. Giger, well before Alien and all that, and he got a guy named Chris Foss, and he got a guy named Dan O'Bannon, and they spent 2 years creating the entire film, storyboarding the entire movie. There's 3,000 storyboards, there's paintings, there's designs, there's all sorts of stuff. And he cast the film with, hilarious people, everybody from Salvador Dali to Orson Welles and Pink Floyd, who was going to do the music. It was really going to be this incredible undertaking. And of course, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is too good to be true, and it didn't happen. So after 2 years, the film studios in Hollywood said, no, we don't understand this project, we don't believe in it. This was before Star Wars, this is before there was a sort of mentality for films like this. So the film didn't happen. And so after all these 2 years of work, what's left was a handful of books. Alejandro and the producers basically compiled all of the artwork into these books, which they gave to the studios when they were pitching. So they gave one to Universal, they gave one to Disney and Paramount and all that, as a way to say, like, I know we sound crazy, but this is our idea. Like, if you look at this book, everything is here. You'll see that, we know what we're doing. And unfortunately, as we said, that wasn't enough. So all that's left of this mythical production is is the documentary. Thankfully they all agreed to make the documentary with me, but what's left are a handful at most of these books. I know Alejandro has one. One was sold a couple of years ago at auction for, I think, $40,000 or something. And
it was $40,000.
There's a handful, maybe. I mean, they think maybe there was 10 or 20 made. I don't even know. I don't even think so. I think that, in all the years since the documentary came out, nothing, only 2 times, only a couple of years ago and just recently, has one of these books resurfaced. So it's a treasured, it's kind of a holy grail for a lot of people, because it's something so special and so many other, the film didn't end. The creation didn't end with that book. Somehow all those ideas escaped from that book and made it into, many other books and many other films that that we're all familiar with. Everything from Raiders of the Lost Ark to, The Terminator and, Contact and all these things. Somehow all these ideas permeated the popular culture, even though nobody has a copy of this book. So it's a very strange thing, and it's a very powerful thing, the way I look at it.
How common was it for a pitch book like that to be sent to a studio? Dan, do you have any idea whether this is a common thing? I mean, you pitch for TV shows all the time. You put together a deck.
Yeah, pitch books are very common. Pitch books are more common than pitch reels. A reel is something that you would film. But a pitch book basically is usually just a short version of the script, maybe a treatment of, 3 to 10 page treatment, some artwork, some photos of actors that you're planning on putting in there, maybe some music to go along with it. But what Jodorowsky and his team put together is unprecedented, which I'm sure it's not a big part of why they passed on it, but it could be part of why they passed on it, because it is so massive and so unbelievably forward thinking of them that I could see a studio looking in and going, what do we do with this? But a piece like that probably wouldn't be kept in certainly today's day, but Jodorowsky was somebody that was important back when this film came out. I mean, The Holy Mountain had come out. It was blowing people's minds that had seen it, and certainly the Hollywood creative elite would have been aware of it. I can't see a book like that being thrown out. I could see it being tucked away or being absconded by directors and never bringing it up because it's such a wealth of ideas. In my opinion, there probably were copies that were thrown away, and this is just my opinion. I don't have any hard facts on this, but I would say there's probably a lot of these just squirreled away for ideas by creatives, Hollywood creatives of the time period. And now that this book has sold for such a big number, I could see at least a few more showing up in auction. But that's just speculation based on my, 20 plus years of seeing pieces go to auction and then other pieces showing up that you thought were unique. It's kind of how this thing's happened. And also fakes, that's something that people are going to have to be aware of. But it certainly is an important piece from an important film. And, it's funny. I just watched your documentary again to refresh my mind. I've always loved Jodorowsky. Great work on that. Anybody who's listening to this that hasn't seen that documentary needs to watch it. It's fantastic. It's really not just great information. It's great storytelling from you and your team, Frank.
Oh, thank you. That really means a lot. Thanks so much.
Yeah, I totally agree on that. When I first saw it, it kind of blew me away that I didn't know anything about this story, and I was completely transfixed and I was completely obsessed with it for a while. And, it really set the bar for that kind of documentary, telling a story. I'm a film fan and I love stories behind the camera as much as I love the stories in front. In fact, probably more behind the camera.
And the crafting of it is what obviously is even takes it to the next level. But I'm sure. Hopefully, we can talk about this at a later time, Frank. I'd love to dig into it.
You can keep the compliments coming. I really, okay. I don't know if we're on a time limit here.
It sucks. No.
So to bring it forward to November,
yes, the modern day in the current time.
Yeah, November 2021. So this book appears and goes up for auction at Christie's. Now, Christie's are an auction house that has, been around all my life. I remember they are the auction house, and it wasn't a film auction. It was a rare books and manuscripts auction. The expected price was 20 to 40K, I believe. And then there was this collective of fans, this collective of Dune fans that decided to get together and get this book. And their plans to distribute it in some way were kind of, half thought of, I think. You might be able to confirm that, Soby, in a moment. But I think the plan was this needs to be in the public domain because, as Dan says, these may well be squirreled away, these copies. There's rumors of George Lucas being hugely inspired. You can see storyboards that match frames in Star Wars, for instance, where Luke's there at the homestead and there's the bodies and obviously with the fighting and everything else. And it should be in the public domain. And this is what this DAO, this decentralized autonomous organization, did and got together. And they managed to raise funds of 750,000, which on the day wasn't enough. And that's where our man Soby here stepped in. So Soby, tell us your contribution to this story.
Okay. So first of all, I think I really appreciate what you've done, Frank, because when I watched your documentary, it literally shifted my perspective on what is possible when it comes to building teams, right? Because it's I think there's these toxic lies in society that we're told you can't have good without evil. I don't think it's a duality or principle at all, right? Or there's this concept of there's such a thing as too much of anything good, right? And being able to share the story of because especially people have to understand this is Dolly at the peak of his career, right? And getting the story of Pink Floyd, where the first time they met, they're eating burgers, and he's like, "What the fuck is up with these guys?" You feel so root, you know what I mean? And it's just crazy, the concept of spiritual warriors. And my personal weird conspiracy theory about it is that if you think about the government, the United States government's involvement in contemporary art at the time, and the fact that there was this proxy cultural war happening, and then you consider the differences between Fremen culture and Jedi's. One is much more collective and has an environmental stewardship, while the other is much more individualistic and kind of in line with the consumerism that America is built on top of, right? So what happens in a movie like this came out at that time, right? I think Wooks and shit talk about shifting the consciousness all the time and shit, but it's a lot of those are just empty bullshit things from people from Burning Man. But I genuinely think that this is one of those things that would have really shifted the consciousness of society at the time, right? And
in success, I agree, it would have.
Yeah, if it was a success, right? But there's other things too where maybe people don't want to go watch a movie for 10 hours, right? That's a whole other thing too, right? And right now we're probably too dopamine deprived to even think about doing that, right? As an overall society. But the thing to be kind of going into it, we were what is the price of an unattained dream, right? You can't really put a price tag on it. And I'll be honest with you, this is majority of my my liquid net worth. Right, I'm taking a huge gamble on this because I know the community, the Web3 community, has my back. Without any marketing or any of this stuff, we raised $1.6 million. We paused contributions while we figured out all the legal stuff. I've connected with a lot of people in the space, and they've given me guidance on how to proceed. And we're going to be open up contributions either today or tomorrow. And I have some announcements of some very prolific people coming in, and we're rebranding away from Dune DAO to Spice DAO. And our goals now is to really build first of all, we want to do everything legally sound. So we're kind of figuring out who owns this thing, the rights to this thing. We're not going to do a Dune thing. That's universal. But there's this manuscript is, I think, independent of Dune, right? In terms of yes, that was the source material, was the inspiration, but it's two different people's interpretation of Dune. Then the artwork is crazy, especially if you look at the direction that the contemporary Dune is done and the art in this. And they're completely different. Right. And the art, Moebius's art in general has been such a huge inspiration for things. And you see the Inkle is really kind of the version of Jodorowsky's Dune that came out. But in the interim, our goal is a couple of things. We're going to be making a physical altar for this thing from like a very successful crypto artist. Kind of, we're gonna do some things that are kind of in the similar vein of like the Adoria or some treasure chest thing. I don't know. You guys probably know about it. There was like a treasure chest that was found like in a pirate ship or some shit. Who's the guy that like really fucked up Mexico when the shirts of gold? Well, I forget his name. It was his. yeah.
Cortez.
Yeah.
There were a number of them, I think.
That's a good point. But yeah, it's his treasure chest or some shit. They put it in Paris, and like, I'm a Philistine, dude. I don't know, man. I guess it was a cool thing. But we'll do something similar to that vein. But the point here is, I think, like knowing Jodorowsky's Dune to me is like a crazy filtration, right? Like I've never met someone that is like aware of this thing, and like I haven't, like, to be honest, which is maybe corny to say or whatever. But even like RTFKT Artifact, they're working with Murakami now on NFTs and all this stuff. And like I know NFTs get a bad rep because people don't understand that they're actually like not environmentally damaging. In fact, like this is the largest redistribution of wealth in the world, and it's gonna like actually like.
I was just going to say, just in case people don't know what an NFT is, what's your quick summation of what an NFT is, Soby?
Dude, it's just like a digital collectible, and you can verifiably prove its ownership on chain. A blockchain is literally just Excel with multiplayer, right? It's nothing that crazy. It's just like a MEND-only database that has the highest level of data integrity. Because most of the time with like big data analysis stuff, majority of your time is spent cleaning data, and most of it sucks or it's really bad, right? So it's like I even have this weird theory where I think the Vedas are the first blockchain, right? And like whatever, but that's a whole other thing. Anyway, the point is, like, I think there's something crazy here where like so if you look at like, we're in the middle of COVID and stuff, all that shit right now, but the last time there was a big plague, Black Plague, the Renaissance came after, right? And like history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes, et cetera, whatever. And there's a digital renaissance here going around, and instead of having one family that is the patrons of all these creatives, you have the opportunity to democratize that and decentralize that in some capacity where like everyone can operate in the same kind of vein that the Medici family operated in, right? Like we're pooling money together to, first of all, get this thing out there, share it with the public in whatever way we can legally, and then go, wait, like this is something that, the ghouls that occupy Hollywood just didn't give a shit about because they didn't know how they could put this into whatever bullshit terms they use or whatever they use to like basically steal people's IP because they're like, oh, we're collaborating on this with you now. Like, we own a part of this because you took 4 of our edits and put it in your script, right? And like all those things, and it's just like, dude, fuck those people, like to some capacity, right? Like we need those people, but like what I'm saying is if money is the problem, right, we can raise the money from the people and go actually do something that like inspires people and puts out like a crazy story that I think should be told. Like one thing in society I think we don't have enough of is like storytellers, right? Like there is no such thing as an original story anyway. Campbell said that a long time ago, right? We just kind of we're just a bunch of stoned apes that keep rehashing the same shit. But it's just kind of funny watching us rediscover these things. And for me, it's like very important for something like this to get like when I tell people about this, like when I watch this documentary, I felt like I discovered fire. Right. And I like wanted to tell everyone about this thing. I was so obnoxious when the Dune movie came out. I was like, yeah, that one's cool. But did you hear about the one that never came out actually? You know what I mean? But sometimes people didn't even believe me about it. They're like, yeah, get out of here, dude. Pink Floyd and Dali. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? Right. Because it just sounds like like Space Jam, right? Where you create like this crazy all-star team of people. And to me, it's like, I want to share that story. And also, dude, if you can help us get in contact with Jodorowsky, I would appreciate that because I'm trying to make sure he's financially stable and set because we are going to do like NFT projects and all this stuff out of this. But like, I'm a big proponent on like, dude, money is just some stupid shit we came up with to like exchange goods and services. Like, that's all it really is. Eventually, we're not going to even have money. We're just going to trade information. But like, maybe whatever, that's a whole other thing. But like, I think when you consider all those things, it's like, why not go out there? And it's almost kind of depressing to me that's like in the twilight of someone's life, they feel so appreciated, right? But I think people should get the roses while they can still smell them, right? And I think we're gonna go first, be the first like basically collective of like Web3 renegades that are gonna come together and finance a crazy animated movie or series we haven't figured out yet. We just know we need a few $1 million to get it done. That's what's funny enough is like, to me, because I'm stressed out right now about the situation, right? I need to raise the rest of the money because I'm trying to buy my parents a house right now, right? So it's like, it'd be very embarrassing for me to be like, hey, mom and dad, got to put that on hold because I put all my money to buy this fucking book just because I felt so strongly about
That's
it.
That's a fair point. Yeah.
and I'm not worried about it. Like I had an interview with a reporter, and I was like, yeah, I know the community's got my back. He's like, what the fuck? Like he just like couldn't wrap his head around it. But it's one of those things where like there's people I've never met before that I've exchanged millions of dollars with and trusted them with. And what's funny is like I didn't even go home for Thanksgiving because I didn't feel like first of all I was so exhausted from everything, right? So I was like, okay, I'm just gonna stay home and get really high and sleep on my couch all day because that's like the one day I could like be okay with no one calling me, nothing. And it really part of it was like, dude, even the jewelry that I'm wearing right now, my watch, whatever, I wouldn't feel comfortable in my hometown with some people like around that. Like, oh, they're gonna fuck around. I grew up like sexually housing, yada yada, all this shit. And so it was just funny to me to be like, these people I've never met before, I feel such a kindredship with them. And it's because like the internet and all this stuff is interesting because, you know, like you're able to take the concept of a village and scale it globally while still having the governance of like a locality or a municipality. Right. And I think in the future, we'll have like thousands of nation states. Right. Like that's what I think the future world is going to look like. There's already several Americas, just depending on where you are geographically. Right. There's parts of this country that unfortunately are like third world countries because they're like old mining towns or whatever that have been stripped of their resources and they're gone and that's it. Right. But like you go live in California or New York, you'll never even know that. You know, depending on where you are in California, you might not even know what's going on. You know, before earlier, I was telling the guys, like, my first job was like literally picking corn in a Monsanto field, like migrant workers. You know what I mean? And it's that's what I realized. Hard work does not equal monetary success because if it did, construction workers would own the world. Like that.
You're very true. There are a lot of people that work hard that don't get to see the result of it. But
yeah, but I mean, let's talk about value. I mean, we're talking about cultural value, we're talking about monetary value. Those two things, you know, have an overlap, but they're also completely separate things, aren't they? I mean, Dan, you've collected props for 25 plus years, and you have some absolute choice items in your collection. And the value of those items is based on what? Is based on a couple of guys, usually guys, bidding against each other in an auction, right?
It's kind of ridiculous in execution, but yes, it is. You know, whether it's auctioned or sold privately, you know, and the thing is that, you know, it's interesting when you think about collecting these works of arts. Yes, they get kind of squirreled away into someone's private collection. Only one person gets to see it in some cases. But it's funny, I was talking to the head person over at the Walt Disney Archives, and she was telling me, Becky Klein, she was telling me that she's very happy that people have collected stuff in the past because the people that at the time should be keeping this stuff, these historical objects, typically don't. Things get thrown away, things get not taken care of. And by the people that are collecting these things, they're able to save them and then ultimately, hopefully come back into the public consciousness and get into museums or studios, museums that people can see and they can share that glimpse of what media and what, you know, fiction has done to help build the world we're around, for better or for worse. I'll certainly, is my intention eventually is to put my stuff, the stuff that I have collected and will still have at that time, into some sort of museum collection. But it is, back to your question, Jamie, sorry I went off on that tangent.
No, it's good.
It's expensive, especially now. I mean, you know, numbers like that book, even though it doesn't relate to exactly what I usually trade in, it's precedent setting. And it's just a sign of where people are thinking of the cultural value is connecting to the financial value. You know, people are willing to put that much money towards pieces like this book because the cultural value is perceived to be equal to that amount of money.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, you know, when I heard that this book was going up for auction, I considered putting money towards it. And I don't collect rare books, but I love Jodorowsky's work, and I love the Dune book, and I love the, you know, all forms
Come be
of
part
Dune.
of Spice Now.
Yeah, well, I just might. But the thing about it is that when I saw the $40,000, I was like, well, is it worth it for me? Maybe someone else can find it that's going to be better, you know, suited for the home. And obviously that was you, Soby. And you know,
well, it's not just me. It's
congratulations.
Like,
I get that. I understand it. But you're the representation right now for that. You're the representation for the collective, right? And certainly the person who is at the tip of that spear. But obviously you have all these other people behind you that are making this happen. Is that correct?
Well, it's like I was really the catalyst for this, but I think like for me, this is where I want my story to start and end, right? Like this dude was either a fucking idiot or like because the goal of a collector is to signal something has cultural significance, right? And every dollar is a vote, right? Like that's kind of like how I view it. And I don't know who the hell we got into a bidding war with, but I remember when we were there, like, and first of all, the auctioneer at Christie's is excellent at his job. He's so good at upselling people, right? So he's like,
they are.
He's like working the room. He's even got me giggling a little bit, like I'm like on my like laptop and shit. But you know, he's like, I thought it was pretty funny. It's kind of a little, it's symbolical of the times, kind of like this guy that's probably like very like traditional wealth or whatever has his representative physically there in Paris, and the guy's like, you know, give like talk to your dude, like you got time, blah blah blah. And then right when they would counterbid, I would just press bid again. Like without thinking about it, because I'm like, well, we got to our hard limit though. Like if that guy bid one more time, we were out. So that was like literally, that was our utmost hard limit. And to me, it's like I come in here and I'm taking on a lot of risk for this, and the reason why is because I like made a career taking risk, right? Like I've been I have this weird thing I used to suffer from. I still do suffer from imposter syndrome, because I know for a fact like some of my success is a product of luck. Right. I'm not going to try to get caught up in hubris, but it's another thing is like my career has also has this, like, I've been early several times, right? I was early to crypto, early to DeFi, early to NFTs, early to gaming, right? So it's this like serial pattern of being early, but with stuff like this, I'm like, okay, this has a lot of importance. And to me, it was like, I'm kind of in that role now where like, yeah, I'm sweating the purchase right now, but I know we're going to figure it out. And it's just, first of all, it's such a fortunate, it's like corny to say, but it's like, be the change you want to see in the world, bro. Like dead ass. Like you can't just sit around all idle and shit and be like, oh, I wish someone would do this. And so you have to go out there and like, I'm extremely uncomfortable about the situation currently until we hand it all off. But I know it's all, and then every time I've been like that in my career, I know it's worked out, right? Because it's nothing like I think we like romanticize being comfortable, right? Like life should be kind of like comfortable and uncomfortable at times. And so with this thing, it's like, okay, my thing is there's a bigger thing like this, just the content of this is such an inspiration. It inspires people like me. If I can come in and be like, yo, look, this is hella important. We just voted with our dollars that this is an important thing. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? And so it's like people are like, oh, this is important. Like people spent a lot of money on this. Oh, wow, they're making a movie or an animated short right now. They haven't really figured it out. I want to be involved in this, all this stuff. I have like a lot of celebrities and prolific people in Hollywood hitting me up about wanting to be involved in this, which has just been like going into it. We knew that we'd be fine because I have a lot of connections in the industry anyway. But like someone very like an insider was like, this couldn't have come at a better time, right? Like because there's a whole Web3 angle here. We're like just a bunch of internet renegades like trying to take shit that's been held like art should not be held hostage, bro. Right. And we're taking that and we're like actually sharing it with the world. And so for me, it's like I want to just be the guy that like was like passionate enough to go take the risk for this, figure out the situation with the fundraising, build this community, and then pass it off to them and let them do it, because ultimately there's a lot of people smarter than me in the world. There's a lot of people that are probably like love this thing as much as I do, if not more. And giving people like, so like the quick thing is like, blockchains are interesting because they benefit from network effects, right? Like there's a thing called Metcalfe's law, which a network is like, it's basically the n square of its users. So if you have a network of 100 people, that's really the same as having 100,000 people. But then it comes down to a bootstrapping problem. They used to use like tokens to bootstrap stuff. Like you're basically bribing people to use things, which is a whole different model than like traditional financial software and stuff. But the thing is, what happens is you create this disalignment where like someone that holds a token for something like Aave, which is a money market borrowing lending marketplace on crypto. It's like one of the largest ones, has billions of dollars in there. And you could trustlessly borrow and lend assets, right? Because it's all like just code, blah, 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 it all works. And the thing is, I don't really like someone like might not give a shit about Aave, right? They just care about their portfolio going up and those tokens going up. But then if you consider IP, right? People care about IP. I always talk about the Star Wars generation because it just cracks me up. It's like they're like the wealthiest consumers of this like CERN franchise, right? Like whether it's like people that just loved it when they were a kid and they have all the Kmart toys that are worth a shit ton, right? Or whatever. And like think about even Game of Thrones. Like you couldn't argue that Game of Thrones was not a commercial success. But if you ask most people that without, that leading question of like, do you think it was a commercial success? We ask them, do you think it was a success? They'd be like, no, because of like how bad like the last season was, right? We just went through a pandemic. I didn't hear a single person say they're going to rewatch this thing, right? And so it's one of those things like IP is interesting because the consumers of the IP almost have like, I wouldn't say like a fiduciary responsibility, but they feel like a stewardship over it, right? They're like, oh, this isn't in the spirit of like, people even say that with like Disney taking over Star Wars. Like, no, this isn't what they would have wanted or blah, blah, blah. And it's just an important distinction to have. And then when you bring in something like this, where we have like a governance token that is really fucking worthless, but it gives you a vote on what we're going to do with this thing. And we're going to generate like revenue probably from like selling NFTs and like doing art projects and all this shit, all the prolific neighbors are going to bring into it. But it's cool to be able to like align people both spiritually and economically, because that's what Silicon Valley got right, dude. It wasn't like it's not like there isn't alkaline water there naturally. It's just people figured out, hey, if you fucking pay people, they'll do shit. It's just compensation and incentive alignment.
That philosophy, though, that you've just talked through there is the complete antithesis of the collector. The collector wants that item because they want it and they don't want that person to have it or that person to have it. And I'm not demonizing collectors here, Dan, but that is, on some level, you want to have that piece because it's your treasure, and you don't want to share it. And,
certainly the majority of collectors think that way. I would agree with that.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously there are exceptions where they'll produce a book to share what they've got, or they'll put an exhibition on to display what they have and share it with a wider audience. But it's never going to reach the kind of audiences that Soby's talking about there.
No.
This feels like a change of guard in a way, doesn't it? It feels like the new generation of collectors and the new generation of how culture is disseminated. I think it's quite exciting.
Yeah, to me, it's kind of funny. I was talking to some people that like, are showrunners or have had success in Hollywood, like HBO or whatever. And I'm like, listen, dude, I don't give a fuck about making money on this thing. And they're like, dude, what? Like, it's just people like are so astonished by that. And I've been very fortunate and blessed. And it's like, to me, like crypto's like rewired my brain in terms of just like my own like lived experience or whatever of like, oh, wow. Like if you actually like reputation, I think is the only actual currency that we have. Right. Like that's like all like life boils down to. And like, for me, it's like, yeah, I could be opportunistic with this. I could do some crazy like tokenomic stuff, all this stuff, but it's like, it just doesn't feel right, dude. It's not about me. It's not even about like the fucking dads like this. It's like, what is the price of an unattained dream, dude? It's like, this is the greatest movie to never come out. Right. And it's like, it's just sharing those stories. I think the zeitgeist of America is so whack right now, bro, or just like society in general. Like, man, I only, when I browse Reddit, I only browse like NBA, NFL, and animation. Right. But like the other day when I was like stoned taking a bath, I like decided to like start browsing the other shit. And like, I'm like, damn, bro, like white people just want to kill everyone in America. Is that what the headlines are saying? I was like, holy shit, no wonder everyone's so fucking anxious. That's why you have like a rise in like mental illnesses. It's not like people are getting weaker. It's just that like the brain should not be stimulated to that degree all the time, right? Like we're attached to these like little devices and stuff. And I think too many people buy into like the Orwellian future. Like I think there's gonna be a whole Brave New World situation that happens, right? But like at the end of the day, it's one of those things where, dude, if there is, I genuinely believe that the world is going to get weird as fuck, dude. Like it's going to get real weird. Like when I see people buying all these dog coins, I'm like, damn, is literally income inequality that bad that people think their only chance for social mobility is literally gambling their life savings into some shit? And it's better than the lottery, to be honest, which is a state-sponsored thing, right? But it's like a sign of the times, you know? And it's one of those things where like there's about to be a massive disruption across everything. And for the first time in history, like culture is like an asset that isn't being gate kept by like the highest group of people, right? Like it's like NFTs, I view them as this thing where like if you have street smarts, you can profit for the first time. Like I was listening to Travis, like, I mean, it's not the best thing to talk about Travis Scott right now, but I've been listening to him for like a decade when he was couch surfing in LA. And imagine if I bought his like Genesis album as an NFT or whatever, right? Because it's this other thing of like going back to like the blockchain, all this stuff. It's like this socialized proof, right? Like tokenized social proof. I do this thing sometimes where I will literally like tell someone I was at an event with them that I know I wasn't, right? And it's just like, it's just a way to open up. I'm like, oh yeah, I remember you from this thing, blah, blah, blah. And like, oh yeah, I remember you now. And it's like, dude, I was never even there.
Yeah, never happened.
Yeah. But you know, it's like a great way to kind of like, you know, maybe gaslight someone a little bit. But the point is like,
is that what NFTs are, gaslighting? I mean, I don't think that's the case, right?
No, I'm not saying it's like you could prevent gaslighting, basically, right? It's
okay.
Because, for instance, let's say that like the Travis Scott example, right? People in communities and collector communities, they love to like flex on each other. Like, bro, I knew about this before you did, right? They love to say that, but what if you could actually prove that with like a piece of technology that has the highest level of data integrity? Right?
So NFTs is going to get rid of lying, is what you're saying, down the road. It will make everybody responsible for what they say and what they do. That type of technology.
And it's the extreme nature of content. Yeah.
Right.
And the consumptive nature of content, right? Like, for instance, I was playing Team Fortress 2 like before the Medic update and stuff, right? And it's like being able to say like, hey, look, yes, I was, like, because everything else is stored on like a database that will just go down, right? Like that's the thing. We were basically creating an atlas, if you will. Like that's what the Sumerians got, right? Dude, was just like a ledger. That's all it was. Like they just figured that shit out before other people did, and it gave them a sophisticated primitive to create. Like, dude, money is literally just memory. That's all it is. It's just memory, right? And like Bitcoin and Ethereum are innately memory.
Yeah, and for Christie's, that was a big step, wasn't it? Opening up their auctions to cryptocurrency, and that's kind of going to therefore change the landscape of it from now on, I would think.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to sell crypto for it, but like they're doing an on-chain auction with OpenSea. I love the OpenSea guys. Alexander is a good friend of mine over there, and you know they're doing an on-chain auction. And to me, like I thought people were gonna get into crypto because of like programmable money, sovereignty of their own wealth, like because I've had a horrible experience with banks. Like when I was very poor, there was a period of my life where I had to only use cash for like 3 months because I was just getting like constantly ass blasted by overdraft fees, right? And that's like hard to do when you're like a 20-year-old kid that just kind of fucked up a little bit. And it's like, you know, you're already living paycheck to paycheck. And then that extra, like, it's crazy to be in the spot that I am now considering those things. But I'm like, damn, these guys suck, bro. Like, what do banks literally do? All they do is hold custody of your money. And now there's a type of technology that does that job for them in a better, more transparent way without making billions of dollars off you. Right. And like, to me, I've always like in 2008, my family lost their business and we had to like, you know, move everyone into like a small, like 2-bedroom apartment and like sell everything and all this stuff, yada, yada. And it, like, we literally never recovered from that, like straight up. Right. And if it wasn't for like how fortunate I've been, like we'd still be like struggling right now. So I've always had this disdain for people on that regard. But like, I don't understand we need banks, we need stuff like that. But like, you know, I'm not like a crazy libertarian about that shit. That shit's pretty cringe. But like, you know, the point I think is like, damn, dude, there's something here where you see, to me, it's crazy that like the people that are, I think, have the loudest voices in crypto are some of the people that like are so obnoxious, like some of the last people you want to have like a drink with. You know what I mean? Because they're gonna turn everything into some crazy ideological thing, or like, you know, they're basically just the economic version of like your overtly liberal cousin that keeps trying to fight drunk uncle at Thanksgiving. It's like, bro, just have some fucking decency, dude. Like, what does it mean to decolonize my bookshelf? I have no idea what you're saying, dude. You know what I mean? But like, it's things like that. So to me, because when you think about crypto, you think about like dudes that were probably like wear Patagonia vests in Silicon Valley that got into like crypto early from their like angel investments, yada yada. But it's like we don't even like those people. Those guys are they are the antithesis of the culture that we're trying to make. And it's really people like me that like are like aggressively self-made, that have like this like view, like, because I think if you treat money scarce, it will become a scarce asset, right? Like I'm a big believer in like the butterfly effect, and one main thing that I'm like doing right now is trying to like build a school in my family's village in Pakistan and all that stuff, because it's like, dude, you know, I have like my main goal is to buy an NBA team one day, inshallah, you know, knock on wood. But that like that's whatever, like that's just like a thing to fucking guide me so I don't get complacent. I don't ever care if that happens or not. Like my ego is not that big. But like to me, it's, can I leave the world a better place than I found it? Like I don't understand when people bring up like Warren Buffett's frugalness as if it's a positive. I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? This guy has more money than God, and he lives in Omaha, Nebraska. Like you should go live on a mega yacht. I would have more respect for you than the fact that like most of the wealthy, I think, are like, they're basically this like weird personification of like the dragon that terrorizes medieval village folk, right? That they just sit on this hoard of gold and don't do anything. And it's like, bro, like, are you just running up the score just to run up the score and not like redistribute this shit and like do things in an effective, like altruistic way? Like this whole thing, this is going to be a lot of work, but to me, it's genuinely going to inspire people. There's probably be someone that we're going to collaborate with this on like an NFT drop that's inspired by the artwork, that this might change their family's lives. You know what I mean? Like imagine being able to empower people that create culture and create like this whole, I talked to some of my friends who are like, you're very talented artists that are classically trained. And they have to like, I was talking to my buddy Armin about this because I was like, you know, I've been helping him out like financially, like getting my Airbnbs, getting my iPads and shit. I'm like, bro, why don't you just communicate with me? He's like, dude, like, I feel like my craft should be a struggle. Like it should be this like painful masochist thing, right? Because society is like, oh, if you're an artist, like you have to love what you're creating so much that you don't care about money. Like you are the struggling artist. That's what it is. Like you get psyopted to that. And it's essentially what they've done to workers, right? Like the fact that workers don't understand they have more rights than the corporations they work for. Like the John Deere strike recently. Like that should inspire everyone to do stuff like that. And even in America, like we like the whole aspect of it is like a social contract where the government like works for us, and we've all like lost the concept. You know what I mean? It's just, we've been it's just weird, bro. It's like, this is not how shit's supposed to work. And the only way you can do that is like remind people by doing shit like this and being like, yo, there is a beautiful energy and a grassroots thing that comes from a pure place. Like, look at what the Deadheads did, right? With just like their community and all that stuff. Like, I don't know, man. I could just be nuts, though. That's like the other thing. Like, right? Like
I was gonna say, Soby, let's pin this down then. What is the best outcome for the book and for you, and what is the worst outcome currently?
So, worst outcome is I just kind of go broke by buying this thing, but I don't think that's gonna actually happen at all. I've already got kind of like commitments from people in my network. But worst, like let's reframe it in a more positive way. Worst outcome in terms of what we can actually do. Yeah. We figured out the money situation. It's just not formalized yet. I'm just being very transparent about that. But then the worst scenario is that all we can really do is a project that's inspired by this thing, right? Like we have a very stacked roster of digital artists that we've been talking to that are super inspired by this thing. Like people I just collaborate with Takashi Murakami, right? And the animated film. Like we can do that irregardless. So we're not doing a Dune movie. We're doing like a sci-fi inspired film that is like animated film that is inspired by things like Dune, things like Asimov, right? Things like Atlas Huxley. It's not just this one thing. Mm-hmm. And then the medium case is that like, ideally we can share the contents of the book with the public. I don't know what the laws are around that. I'm trying to figure that out. Actually, no one fucking knows who owns this thing or the contents of this thing. And I'm trying to reach out to Jodorowsky movies because I think like we're gonna like the basically the full purpose is like how can we generate extra revenue to actually do the things we want to do? Because we're gonna raise probably end up $6 million total. 2.5 is gonna be earmarked for the animated stuff. Then we'll do like an NFT drop too. Proceeds will go back to the DAO, and then boom, we'll do it again. Do something with it. But I would love to get involved with them and actually give them money. Like literally, I'm trying to give them money. It's like, bro, you're such an inspiration. Like you should have been way more commercially successful than you are. because of just like that dude is literally fucking responsible for some of the largest grossing sci-fi franchises in the world, bro. And it's crazy that like, it just makes me very upset to even think about the
Jodorowsky is, but so are his artists. So is Frank Herbert, who inspired, who wrote the book.
Yeah.
I mean, it's complicated, right? It's not just.
It's very complicated.
And I love Jodorowsky. I love his work, and I'm sure he would say the same thing.
I'm talking about Moebius in particular. I think Moebius' artwork is, his stuff is crazy, dude. I can't even believe what's going on there, right? Yeah. But it's the credits to Jodorowsky for that team. But my point is just like, because I come from a world where like, if you are doing things that are culturally significant, you are getting money for that in the right ways. Like some of these NFT artists, and it's like, it just happens like it's just kind of wild to me, like that. Because I'm naive, bro. I'm 25 years old. I don't know shit all about how the world works.
25 years old.
Wow.
Yeah. But like,
impressive. Like, impressive though, man.
Do you know what I keep thinking throughout this is that line from Jodorowsky when he talks about wanting to change people's perception. I think what you're doing, Soby, is you're changing people's perception. I mean, you've certainly changed mine this evening.
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
I'm trying to, bro. Yeah. Like, it's because I really feel like I'm like, this shit is so cool. There's so much cool stuff going on. No one knows about it. Like, how do we get people to know about it and get like inspired by it, and without like these bad actors co-opting and putting their face in front of everything, because they're so detrimental to the industry, right? Like, there's like some of the biggest crypto YouTubers are straight grifters, dude. That I like. It really pisses me off. But the thing is, with this type of stuff, it's like, okay, like we're gonna really do something cool here in a way that hasn't been done before. Even the fact that we're able to crowdsource money in a trustless way is like, that alone is a technological innovation that like couldn't have been done, right? Like, and the thing is, allowing like basically for people on the outside looking in, they're going to be like, oh wow, like I'm part of the governance for this thing that is actually like doing stuff, and that will trade at a premium or whatever, right? Like the Constitution DAO thing that couldn't buy, like, someone tried to buy the Constitution and it didn't work out, and their token is trading at a $400 million valuation. And that's just because the memes, right? It's like ridiculous. I don't know what's going on over there, but like, think about like what it means to be kind of the first type of collective of like this, to be like, yes, we just basically emancipated this like Bible of sci-fi, right? And then we used it as an inspiration. Like, that's such a strong narrative. And I'm excited because dude, it's way cooler to talk to someone about like, oh wow, you love like Jodorowsky's Dune, you love sci-fi. And then like you kind of like Trojan horse them, if you will, into understanding what crypto is really about, right? And it's way cooler to approach the conversation from there than be like, hey bro, have you heard of inflation? Like, it's like, I don't give a shit about inflation. I care about making people excited, right? And so it's a funny thing, man. I like, because I was trying to buy a dinosaur a while ago with my friends, and we didn't win the dinosaur. And like my whole thing is, I wanted to just tell people like, yeah, I rent, but I still own a dinosaur. I go to this Italian place nearby, and I always like, get some nice wine. But I wanted to start going there by myself and just sit in the corner and like find a table and send them like a bottle of wine. And then the staff goes like, this is from that gentleman over there. And they like look at me and I like cheers them. And all they tell them is like, he owns a dinosaur. And they took that from me, bro. They took that from me. I didn't get to do that. That's such a funny bit.
Man, if I had half your energy, half your smarts, half your humor, I'd be a happy man, I think.
Oh my God, I would be ecstatic. I totally agree. Yeah.
Life is
very inspiring, Soby. You're really, really inspiring, I have to say. Like,
I just be chilling.
Dare I say almost
so
cult
many
figure-ish, but
levels,
it's
I think the three of us probably came in here slightly cynical before this call. And I think we're coming out the other side feeling quite inspired in a way. I mean,
you obviously have got the right attitude, Soby, to make this thing work, man. And you couldn't pick a better subject of, Dune with Jodorowsky, Moebius, and Giger. I mean, some great stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, dude, none of this would have been possible if it wasn't for Frank's like documentary, though. Like, you know what I mean? That's the whole butterfly effect thing, dude.
That's
like, how crazy is that? You know what I mean? Like, you went out, you got fucking distribution from so many classics, you figured it out. You're like, I'm going to go fucking find these old dudes I probably don't even know what email is. and like, interviewed all this. Like, that's so sick to me, dude. And it's like, it's hard not to be excited, And like, end of the day, it's like, you gotta give credit to like the trailblazers before you, but it's not like, it's just such a weird distinction to be like, yeah, I don't give a shit about the money. And like, I think it's such a strong signal, right? Because like what I do is I'm a founder at a game publisher now, right? And we're focused on building Web3 games, et cetera. So like my co-founders are like, I'm like the least oppressive person on my team in terms of what they've actually done. Like these guys, you know, built Clan Wars, ran IGN's game incubator. Mark Harris is like a Pixar guy that worked on Borrowed Time, Soul, et cetera, et cetera. And it's just awesome to be able to be the people that are going to change the perception of crypto companies, right? Because it's like, no, we're not like tech bros. Like actually, like we have like 2 white people on our executive team, right? Like that's like unheard of for game. I don't even give a shit about identity politics, but like, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. It's just like the perception is already different than what you think going into it, right? Sure. Like and so to me, it's like that type of stuff is important to where like, dude, like when I see people do all this cash grabby shit, because it's like I am a capitalist, right? Like I'm trying to make money, but I'm trying to like do shit with that money and like give it away and stuff. Because even when I recently bought like a very nice watch, and I felt like such a profound level of guilt when I saw this woman selling like fruit on the corner. I'm like, what the fuck am I doing, dude? I could just go hand this woman this lump sum of cash, and I could probably like alleviate some of her or like her fears. People aren't depressed, bro. They just are poor. Like that literally is what it is. You know, it's like when you have to stress about fucking like it was even from like I used to butt heads with my parents all the time, and I didn't realize like I remember when I first went to college, I used my buddy's ID because he's also just brown or whatever, and I was so excited to be in the bar. I was like, hell yeah, I'm in a bar. Like this is so cool. I'm gonna buy everyone around. I was like, oh, let me get a round of Irish car bombs, and she handed me the check, and I was like, God damn it, $80, bro. I have like $200 in my bank account right now. This sucks. I didn't know shit cost this much. You know, and it's one of those things where like when you start to realize people like, to me, I've had my issues with like mental illness, and like, you know, I think a lot of people it's okay to not be okay, dude. Like it's like shit gets rough sometimes, bro. That's just life, you know. But it's like we've turned society into this like weird simulacrum of like, no, everything's good all the time, blah 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 blah. And it's think about a lot of people's problems come from the fact they're stressed out. Maybe like you're worried about how they're going to pay the rent next month. They're stressed out about that. Then their spouse gets in a big fight with them. But it's really like their anger is from like other things that they're redirecting at them. Now their household life is all weird. Yada. Like there's tons of situations like that. And to me, it's like, I don't think there's going to be this, like, it's hard because it's like, can I really say that it's going to be like a utopian egalitarian society? I don't think so, man. It's going to be hard to get there. Like, I think if I were to describe our current society, I would describe it as like a triangle, like very top down, right? It's just topology, but hopefully one day we can turn society into like a hexagon, right? That's like much more egalitarian on all sides. And I think the way you do that is like, we're kind of like, what's the shit? Like we're like teenagers basically, right? Like we're in our adolescence as this, like, I think species, right? And like, I think when you're adolescents, you got a lot of angst. I think you're seeing like a lot of that existential angst come out right now with like people being so divided on other things, yada, yada. And I think we're going to slowly shift away from that. And part of it is going to be the fact that like the internet is a dark and scary place, dude. That's why I think some of this like profile picture stuff is interesting, because it's what you're signaling to someone, right? Like, it's like, oh yeah, I have a CryptoPunk because I was probably early. I actually believe the same things as you do. And it's a way, like going back to the like great filtration thing. To me, I think like I'm a huge sports fan, but I think sports jerseys are super funny because you're basically wearing someone's work uniform. You're
cosplay. It's cosplay. Yeah.
You're like excited about it. But when I see someone wearing a Sacramento Kings jersey, I automatically like them more. I'm like, oh, like you like this weird arbitrary thing that I do. Right. And then when you could build a community around like a loved belief or shared belief, like that's so much more powerful than like what someone's purchasing power is. Like, who gives a shit about that, you know?
Man, that's cool.
You're right about that.
So, Soby, what can people do if they want to get involved in the Dune DAO then?
So you can commit your time or your money or just hang out, man. Honestly, like we're gonna open up fundraising. Like seriously, we're gonna open up fundraising today or tomorrow. I think we're gonna do an announcement with some of the new people joining our team, and then from there, just like at the end of the day, like I want this thing to be like. I literally do not like the money stuff. I think we have handled, but if you want, like, you want to share in the upside and some of the stuff that we're doing, and be actually like aligned and have skin in the game, go for it. If not, like, just hang out on the Discord. You'll probably learn something. We're gonna start having movie nights. Like, it's just so cool to be able to find something that like, and I'm sure Frank, it's probably been nice for you to see like wow, people, because I think I was like, one of my best friends, his father, Marcus, who's like big Hollywood director guy, did Conan, Pathfinder, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Halloween. He showed his kids the Jodorowsky's Dune. And then Dune in the book actually reignited my love for reading. I grew up in a very conservative town in post 9/11 America. Everyone used to bully me, blah, blah, blah. So I used to like not go out to recess. I'd just be like fucking hanging out with puzzles and reading books and shit. And like I kind of like lost that after college and stuff. And I remember when I started reading Dune, what I loved about the book is like I didn't know what was going on for the first 100 pages. And I'm like, wow, you respect me enough as a reader for me to figure it out. Like that's like my type of thing that I loved about it. And like really
that's what I felt like. That's what I felt like reading the Discord the other day. But I now understand.
It's wild, right? Like memetics and shit. But I was like, wow, this is such a good book. I love. Like I couldn't put it down. I couldn't believe that like there was a thing like this that existed that I didn't know about until my 20s. Like I never read Harry Potter, thank God, because I think the Harry Potter crowd is so annoying. But like, you know what I mean?
Well, Dune is many levels above Harry Potter. I would agree with that.
Oh, big time, right? But it's when then I watched the documentary and I was like, it's like, damn, like what did they take from us? Like I can't believe this like didn't come out. And then I watched a Netflix trailer for a woman that like it's a show, it's a movie, and it's just the whole premise is like this girl in high school who's tall. It's literally called Tall Girl. Like that, I was like, this is getting funded, but this didn't.
This
like, what kind of clown world are we in? You know? And then we decided to just kind of take matters into our own hands, I guess.
It's interesting you bring that up because maybe as a final point, maybe now is the time for this because, they said, it could be a 12-hour, 20-hour movie that he wanted to do. And the landscape at the time, culturally and infrastructure-wise, just wasn't there. Now we have, all these streaming companies. Okay. Maybe something like this would be picked up now, even with its outlandish nature. But it certainly feels like I was just going to say, it certainly feels like the right circumstances have all come together for you to pull off what you've pulled off, though, Soby.
Well, I think the Incals there's talk about it becoming a series, I believe.
Yes, that's right.
Really?
Yeah.
That's so sick.
No, it's going to be a film. It's a film.
Yeah. It's going to be a film.
Okay. Taika Waititi is going to.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Yeah. That's right. Yeah.
That's so sick.
He's writing it right now. Yeah.
I have the Inkle on my bookshelf, like behind me, all bird out.
Oh,
but
nice.
Our thing is like, dude, anyone that wants to be involved, because it's like, dude, the money is whatever. I don't give a shit about that. Like, there's people involved that are just connected in the industry that actually care about this thing, right? That are helping us out. Because it's at the end of the day, like, I'll be the first person to tell you how like inexperienced I am in the real world, right? Like, I barely know what the fuck is going on half the time. Like, that's the real secret though to life. No one really knows what's going on.
Well, it doesn't change. I can tell you that. Age 45.
Yeah, I'll probably feel the same way when I'm like 45. I probably won't be aging, so I'm already aging like fucking milk right now, dude. Shit is like super stressful to be out here. But like to me, that's what's exciting is like people kind of hitting us up like through different contacts. I'm like, yo, do you guys know who bought that Dune shit? Like, I love that thing. Like, how can I be involved? Right. And if this can be people's first introduction into crypto the right way, like that's even better. Right. That's a second order effect. That is super nice. Because I feel like just from our conversation, you guys were like, I had this like 2.5 hour long interview with BuzzFeed, and the guy, I asked him like very candid, I was like, did you expect me to be this type of person when you like reached out to me? And he's like, not at all, dude. Like, what the fuck is going on here? Right. And it's just because like, I don't know. I have this whole thing where I need to quit suffering from this like immigrant mindset of like imposter syndrome and shit. Be like, yo, like I actually know what the fuck I'm doing. And like, this shit is super important. And like people like me need to be guiding the conversation to the forefront of this stuff, not people that are like Amazon wholesalers or like internet marketing scumbags that just go, oh, this is like my new grift that I can do. Right.
Well, people like you need to lead this stuff because you're obviously, not only are you obviously, excited by it and, but you, to me, unless you have me fooled, you're very pure about it. You're really like, you're coming at it from this really pure and honest place, which is incredibly rare. I mean, as we all, as the four of us know, and I don't know shit about crypto. I don't know anything about any of this.
Hey,
but just this conversation has made me, not that I know anything more about it, but it's interesting now all of a sudden because I'm not talking to some, douchebag from, you know what I mean? Like it's some normal guy who's led a real.
Well, hey, I'm on the
maybe very young, but you've led a real life.
No, but you're very passionate about this, and passion is the number one way to get your point across. So yeah, you've got that going in spades, and I think this is a great platform as long as you got to treat the source with respect, which obviously you are. I think
facts, bro. You have to do that. And like the other thing is just, I don't know, bro. This shit is like, I love talking to people like you guys that it's like, this is if you told me a year ago that we'd be having this conversation, I'm like, well, get the fuck out of here, bro. What are you talking about? Right? Because it's just like my whole thing that I think is important is like crypto and culture are being talked about for the first time, and finance is being omitted from that conversation. Right. And that's like a very important distinction, trend change. But the same time, I was like, the other day, someone on Twitter, like Virgil Abloh passed away, who's like the off-white guy, also like first African-American man to be the head of Louis Vuitton men's like fashion, which is like insane. Yep. Right. And I don't expect everyone to know who that person is. But if your whole thing is like, I'm in NFTs, I'm a person that comments on culture, and you don't know who the fuck that is, like someone tweeted that the other day, like a big influencer. And I was just like, dude, are you kidding me? Like it literally like upset me. I'm like, who the fuck are these people then? Right? Like, cause we have this weird thing on Twitter where like, I have like 40 whatever thousand followers. I don't give a shit about that. But like people go on there and they see social proof, right? They go, oh, look, this guy's got a little check mark or whatever. And it's like, dude, do you even know what this person's actually doing? Like, for instance, like sometimes I'm an angel investor in things and they'll ask me like, can you tweet about some stuff? I'm like, I will tweet about it if I really like it. But I'm going to say I'm an investor and I bought this thing way cheaper than you did, bro. Please be mindful of that.
Right.
And like, it's because the whole thing is the industry is built atop of this pattern of disgusting behavior where it comes from like the fact is like, as the industry matures, you need advertisements, dude. Like paid promotion is going to become a thing. But if you're not setting the precedent to do that in the right way, then all you're doing is really just like, there's probably so many stories of some guy that like, it's probably some like union like lineman or some shit that has saved up 20 G's and goes, okay, I need to get into crypto. Like crypto's how I'm going to make money. Then he goes on YouTube and listens to fucking that. I'm not even a mean person, but that guy is a straight up grifter, dude. And because he's like, I'm serious, bro. He is in terms of like what he does. And the fact that he's the largest YouTuber, right? He shows you shit's like, oh, this is a coin you'll earn while walking. Right. And it's because he's getting paid like probably $200,000-$300,000 to make that video. And you think that guy knows what you're doing because you don't like, no one knows what the fuck crypto is about. This is like a very nascent thing. And you put your 20 grand that you worked super hard putting into this and then boom, you're fucked. Right. Because you just didn't know. It's like, ultimately like people say do your own research all the time, but it's like, bro, we need to teach people how to do research. Yeah. Like that's the whole thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, when is
people like that, dude?
When is lesson number 2, by the way? I feel like I feel like I need more of this in my life.
Dude, listen, if you guys ever have any questions, I'm busy most of the time, but I will make time to answer any of them because it's to me, I love being an evangelist for this type of stuff, especially when it's people like you guys are like, wait, this is actually kind of sick. It's kind of the vibe I'm getting right now. And to me, that's my favorite thing to do because I love it when people, one of my pet peeves is when someone will say like, yeah, I've seen that when they have it. It's like, bro, why would you lie about that? Like someone could share something really cool with you.
There's no shame in not knowing everything. Yeah. There's no shame in
it. No one knows anything.
Yeah.
Literally no one knows shit, bro. We literally fundamentally do not even know if we're made of particles or waves. Right. So it's like, we literally don't know shit all about the world, bro.
Well, I think you've managed to rewire 3 brains here to a certain extent. I mean, my assumption was it was a transaction. It was one guy putting in a crazy amount of money to buy one thing. End of. I didn't realize until I started to look into this further, and hence why I wanted to have you on the podcast, Soby. And also now having had you on the podcast, I feel like I know even more than I just, it's completely unexpected in many ways.
Fascinating.
But, yeah.
Really, genuinely fascinating.
Yeah. It feels like,
and now after hearing you talk about this stuff, I realize how much more I need to know myself.
Yeah.
Hey, Eddie,
How much I don't know.
You guys use, yeah. I mean, dude, that's what is it? The fucking something Dunning-Kruger effect or some shit, where you realize, oh, actually, I don't know shit, and that's basically I hate calling myself an expert because I'm like, bro, no one can be an expert of something that because to me it's I'm living history as it's being written. I'm in the story as it's being written, right? And that's there's a huge benefit to that because it's not like I'm jumping in halfway through and going, wait, what's going on here, right? And so I'd love to just share whatever experience or knowledge. I hate when people go, this is a stupid question. Bro, there is no such thing as a stupid question, bro. Ask whatever. It's okay.
I think we should end it there, guys. I think that was very cool. Man, really appreciate it. Yeah, thanks so much.
All right, guys, I got to run now. I got 30 minutes for my next call.
Thanks, guys.
Appreciate you guys. This is awesome.
Thanks.
Enjoy that. Cheers.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you so much.
Later.
Wow. Guys, stop there. Did you just... I mean,
that was amazing.
I had trouble keeping up, I'm not going to lie.
But there was so many little, I cannot wait for this episode to come out because I want to go back and listen to it because I feel like there was these pearls of wisdom from him. At one point he said, history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe I'm sure that's a line from something. I've never heard it. And it was but these little things he would just drop throughout. It was he was fascinating.
What I found fascinating was that he'd go off on this, what I thought was a tangent.
Yeah.
And then you think he's never going to get this back on point, and then he managed to kind of bring it back round, like a good comedian does when they're on stage and they're really vibing.
But he was, I don't know, he was really wonderful. What an interesting guy.
I found it quite exciting to talk to somebody who's that excited about something as well. It's kind of, you kind of find yourself drawn in by it, don't you? It's yeah. Well, I hope you enjoyed my chat there with Frank, Dan and Soby. After Soby left the call, Frank, Dan and I spoke for about another 30 minutes. I think we were all trying to absorb what we just heard, as I'm sure you are now. I think this story is far from over. I mean, who knows where it might go, but Soby is clearly very passionate about this, as well as his beliefs and his methods of conducting himself. So I'm fascinated to see what happens. Ultimately, I think those original wishes of the collective to publish the book or republish the book are now gone. But as Alejandro Jodorowsky himself said, failure doesn't mean anything. It just means changing paths. And whatever path this project takes, I think it's going to be pretty captivating. The following morning, I checked that account, the Spice DAO account they'd relaunched overnight, and they'd raised $11 million towards this project, which is just insane. I still can't work out whether Soby is a madman or is a genius. Who knows? I don't know anything about that world. I just want to say, I hope nobody's listened to this thinking, oh, I'm going to throw my money into Ethereum or into Bitcoin, because you never know. You've got to be aware of the risks. And, we talked about doing your research. Well, it's difficult because you do have to become, pretty well versed in this stuff before you get involved. So it's a cautionary tale, maybe, this one, and I don't want to feel as if this podcast is an endorsement. Frank and Dan and myself do not endorse what Soby is doing. We're kind of surprised and amazed and blown away by what they're planning and what he's planning. But at the same time, it can't be something that we give the thumbs up to. As charismatic and as exciting as Soby is to talk to, I think we just have to bear that in mind. And I hope you do too. Thanks for joining me for this exclusive episode of the podcast, and I hope you can do so again for the next episode of the Filmumentaries podcast.
want to make the most fantastic art of movie, try. If you fail, it's not important. No? We need to try.